All right. This appears to be working. I had to put on my headset. Hopefully that does the trick. I see the sound levels are showing up on my end. They were not showing up for anybody else except intermittently turning on and then shutting back off again. So I'm hoping that this will do the trick. I'm going to wait a couple minutes here. It's now 2:20 and I am going to wait a couple minutes here just to make sure first of all that the sound comes on, and then secondly, if anybody happens to comment, which I hope you do, then we will be able to see and respond. See, cannot post comments to Facebook. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. So, so the good news is, I think I figured it out, and I had to just move it around a little bit, put on my headset, and it appears to be working. Oh my gosh, people are giving me thumbs up. That means this hopefully is working. So sorry about that, guys. It's a little confusing when it does not work, but when it does work, it works really well, you know? So thanks, Sean. I appreciate that loud and clear. Okay, awesome. So I think I figured it out. So maybe next time I'll have to keep my headset on. So anyway, okay, so we're going to talk about the switcheroo. I'm going to get into this, and we'll just jump right in. Also, before I do, I want to point out, just published an article on my blog, disabledveterans.org, earlier this week. That article is about testicular cancer and the potential links that testicular cancer may have to our military service and some of the things that we're exposed to. It sounds like there is research that is coming out that does support a possible connection. So, what that may mean to at least some of you is that if you are dealing with testicular cancer or other forms of cancer that the VA refuses to service connect, it could be possible to get that service connected now, depending on the type of expert that you have and the type of evidence that's available, because research is coming out that does suggest that there's a link. So, wanted to plant that seed for any of you that may be affected. And so, having said all that, today what we're going to be talking about is the what I call the switcheroo, or the bait and switch for VR&E. And what that really means is a situation where a veteran goes into VR&E benefits. They think that they are applying for a particular goal because they've talked to the VRC about that particular goal repeatedly. The VRC then fills out the individualized written rehabilitation plan, hands it to the veteran to sign without explaining what's in the plan. Veteran usually then will sign said plan, and only later, when it comes time to actually implement parts of the plan that may be a little bit more advanced, like going to law school, medical school, or something like that, then the VRC will say, we only approved you up until an undergrad, or up until wherever that person is at, and nothing more. So now what you have to do is, you, little veteran, have to go out into the workforce, prove that you cannot get a job doing X, whatever that is. And then maybe if you can't get a job doing X, then come back. And so what I explained in the comment section is that in my mind, this is one of the worst, if not the worst, deceptive and economically damaging moves that a VRC can perpetrate on an unsuspecting veteran. I see it a lot, like a few times a week. We'll hear some kind of story about it. I've seen this with my own clients that I've represented successfully against VA. One of the first instances where this had come to my attention was a now friend of mine, well before I became an attorney, who thought that he was approved to become a pilot. And come to find out later, the VRC had written something else into the plan, and the veteran didn't read the plan. We tend to just kind of trust what's put in front of us, which VR&E VRC counselors tend to know. We do tend to overly trust those in the government when we get out of the service. And so, anyway, what I see very frequently is new veteran comes in, thinks they're signing a plan to become a lawyer, doctor, something like that. They haven't completed the undergrad quite yet. And the VRC, in a little bit of a switcheroo, will approve a dot code without explaining what the dot code means, or vocational goal. And when you really look at what the dot code means, It'll mean something other than lawyer or physician. It'll mean instead something like lab tech or paralegal or some lower objective. And the type of training that the veteran thought they were being approved for, in fact, sometimes isn't, or frequently isn't in the plan either. Again, they think that they're doing it, and what the VRC will usually say, almost always, is, well, we can't approve the whole thing in here. You have to prove how well you're going to do. And then after you prove how well you're going to do and you graduate with your undergrad degree, only then will we consider this additional form of training. Again, what usually happens, and this is part of the switcheroo, when the veteran gets to the end of the plan, they then seek the additional training that they were promised, verbally, of course, not in writing. And the counselor will then look at them confused, or in most cases, it's a new counselor because veterans get bounced around a lot. New counselor comes in, they have no idea about the prior discussion, and the veteran is left holding the bag with half of the training they thought they were going to get and without the career. That's deceptive. When a veteran and a counselor work on a plan, they believe that the plan is for them to become a lawyer or doctor. That should be what is then on the plan, assuming that that objective is reasonable, um, depending on other variables. But instead, what happens is the counselor will usually write that plan up, and it'll be half what the veteran thought. And when it comes time to make good on it, the veteran won't be able to make good on it. And so what that usually results in is the veteran ends up with an inadequate training. They can't get their particular goal. They then either continue that training, or if they don't have the support and are unable to for whatever reason financially, then they're stuck. And so I've seen instances where veterans end up unemployed for a long time or chronically unemployed. And the move, in addition to that, has a detrimental effect on the veteran's perspective or perception of the federal government. Suddenly they believe the federal government are a bunch of liars and crooks, and don't trust, right? And are victimized in many instances for a good reason. They don't trust because they were lied to or manipulated. Now, a VRC, most people may think, well, a VRC, like, they're doing the best they can. They're just people. Yes and no. So, yeah, some of them are doing the best that they can, but they are trained professionals with graduate training and usually certifications, and know very well what they are doing or not doing. Oh, they definitely know that the type of training that they're not approving is or not writing into the plan is going to have a detrimental effect on the veteran. So it's dishonest. Let's just call a spade a spade. It is to the economic detriment of a disabled veteran. We're not talking just a normal veteran here. A disabled veteran who already has disadvantages, sometimes serious disadvantages, or vocational impairments in comparison to other individuals trying to do the same thing. And, it puts the American public at a disadvantage because the American public and taxpayers are paying these counselors to do their job and to do it right. Part of that includes implementing these plans the way that Congress has set forth and the way that the Secretary has written into the regulations. When a VRC is deceptive about what they're doing, it is economic inefficiency in and of itself. But more importantly, it's a economic inefficiency against the veteran and also the taxpayer because the money's not being used properly. Why wouldn't you, as a country, want somebody who has the capability to invent things or to become a high earner and then potentially pay more in taxes, right? These are things that we want. In fact, these are things that we need as a population. We definitely need more people that have earning potential or ability to invent or to create, especially now as we come into these economic downturns. And this is what we need more of. And unfortunately, this is not what we are getting. We are not getting the thing that we bargained for as taxpayers. And veterans are not getting, the promise of their square deal, which is the slogan of our website that I've had up for, 13 years. The, Theodore Roosevelt had said back in, I think it was like 1903, that, veterans, essentially, anyone willing to shed their blood for the country deserves a square deal afterwards. And 120 years later, I think that's still a pretty good idea. Unfortunately, there are people out there that don't agree and that think that it's okay to sell a veteran short as long as as long as they apparently get their money. So I think it's important for us to be aware that this goes on. Now, here's the thing, veterans. It's also partly our fault, right? Because we're trusting of the government. We were trained to do that. We were, in a sense, the victims of cognitive behavioral therapy through basic training and experiences after that condition us to trust your chain of command, to trust those in authority over us. And part of making it through basic training or other training is that you have an ability to be broken down, build back up, and assimilate. VA knows this. Many other groups know this as well, and they use it against us frequently when it comes to us making good on that deal. The deal to take care of us after we come back from military service with disabilities. And unfortunately, our government has been either unwilling or unable to hold its own employees to account and make sure that they follow through with what they're required to do. So now to the last part of what I want to talk about, I promised here that we would talk about what it is. Now, also what it's not. One of the things that I want to point out, because the bait and switch is bad, it's very real. We should make sure that we read, though. And so that's on us, right? I mean, at the end of the day, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Right? Wait, no. Anyway, some order, right? Shame on somebody. Anyway, you really need to read it. It's in the fine print. You got to read your own plan. If you agree to something without reading it, that can be a problem. Now, on the other hand, the VRC should be and has a duty in most instances to convey accurate information and to do what they're supposed to do. And if they're withholding that information from you knowingly, that's a fraud. It's dishonest. It's not correct. So there are methods of dealing with that, but also we as veterans probably need to wise up as a population and be sure that we're reading the contracts that are being put in front of us, especially when it comes to VR&E and whether you're going to get approved for a $200,000 law degree or merely a certification course in paralegal training. Okay. So definitely got to read. Very important. Same thing with medical school. I see this all the time. Veterans think that they're going to get approved to become a physician, and the counselor writes the plan for only being sufficient to get the veteran through an undergrad, and then they'll try to push the veteran in the direction of a lab tech or something like that. I see it all the time. So it's really important for us to only sign what it's, if it says what you think it says, then okay. But if you don't agree, don't sign it. And if you don't read it, don't sign it either. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit at the end here of what to do because that's important. It happens to a lot of us. So the first thing is read. Make sure you read what it says. And it seems obvious, but a lot of times the counselor will give you something to sign. They won't explain it. And that's the end of that. Make sure that you have the counselor walk through each box with you, especially for the part of training, and make sure you understand what it says. And if it doesn't make sense or it doesn't pass the smell test, don't sign it. Try to get a second opinion. We have a Facebook group for those of you who are seeing this elsewhere, like on YouTube or LinkedIn. We have a Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Voc Rehab, VOCREHAB, that you can join. You got to follow the directions, though, because I asked some questions there, and you got to put in your email. If you don't do that, then we don't bother with it, and you don't get in. But make sure you follow the directions, put the information down that is requested, and then you'll get in. Ask questions in the group. Lots of people there have been through VRE, whether it be law school, like VRE for myself. They paid for my undergrad and then law school, and then helped support part of my law practice. And there are a fair amount of veterans out there that are like me that are also in the group. So make sure that you come in there, ask some questions, try to find out a little bit more about the issues that you're facing, and hopefully you'll get those questions answered. So when it comes to this situation and what do you do? Don't sign it. Make sure you get a good explanation. If you don't agree, or you were not allowed to participate in the development of the plan, which is something we see frequently, then you probably shouldn't sign it, especially if you don't agree with it, and put that in writing. At that point, when the vocational relationship devolves, or the counseling relationship devolves, I think it's important then to start, being proactive, put it in writing, what you seek and what you're trying to accomplish. Keep it super short, sign it, date it, put the last four of your social on the document so it makes its way into your file, hopefully. Send it to them by fax or mail. And put in writing the thing that you're requesting explicitly. Now, when you're going for voc rehab, it is super important that you never only just put forth a goal that is just education. Don't do that. VA is required to develop, and so they should, if that happens, they should help you flush out what it is that you're trying to do, because it's a vocational program, so you have to have a vocational goal as the end goal. If that vocational goal requires training like law school, medical school, a PhD in psychology, something like that, and it gets approved, then of course, this is, we're rocking and rolling, right? But you can't just say, well, my goal is to have a PhD. Well, that's not an appropriate goal within VRE. So you got to be aware of that. Make sure that you're pulling in the information and giving them the information in your requests that are appropriate. Never only focus on just the education, because that doesn't make sense. I know a lot of people, what they usually mean. So if they say medical school, they obviously usually mean they want to be a physician, not just get a medical doctorate and walk off somewhere. Uh, so in my opinion, VRE should do a little bit more in those instances when a veteran maybe misstates what they're seeking, to then clarify and expound upon it. But often I see VRCs don't do that. So, just be aware that that could be an issue. So make sure that you go over it with the counselor, right? If you don't agree, put in writing what it is that you're actually seeking. Make sure you're explicit. Make sure it includes a vocational goal and the training you think you need to get to that goal. Real straightforward. That part is not rocket science. Now, maybe you want to be a rocket scientist, and then make sure you write that out the right way. But aside from that, it's not rocket science. You just have to put it in writing. Do not rely on verbal statements. That's just so many veterans do it. I know I used to do it. I don't. I'm an attorney now. I've been an attorney for quite a while, and I no longer suffer from that delusion of somebody's word is their bond, kind of thing. So we know that that's just unfortunately not how it works in real life. But veterans frequently fall for that, and VRCs will just tell us stuff, and we go off thinking that's what we're approved for, and just don't read anything else. So yeah, you got to be careful about that. So anyway, going back to the end, how we can fight back, we put it in writing. That's the biggest thing you can do. I am also working on equity complaints, because I feel that now that the Biden administration in this current, Biden's America, has brought up equity. I think that the equity issue that this does. Oh, hang on a second. Let's see if I can get the camera to refocus. So I think that the when this happens, and you have somebody in authority over you that is a voc rehab counselor, when they kind of dupe you, this is I think it's an equity problem in part, and they're dealing with disabled veterans. And we know that veterans, to even become a veteran, means that you went through some form of basic training where they engage in cognitive behavioral therapy that breaks you and then builds you back up into some other thing. And you don't fit in society anymore in many instances, or if you do, you're still a little bit off. Most of us are that way, So food for thought, they have an obligation to us. We have an obligation to ourselves to read. When you're fighting back, you put it in writing. You may also want to file an equity complaint with your congressman or the White House. I have heard that this might be a thing worth doing in some instances to see what happens. I'm going to develop out, this for my own clients because I think there's some instances where this is definitely needed. So it's something I think that we should think about as a group. But anyway, so equity complaint to the White House. Also, if it's wrong and you did sign it, then there's going to be some challenge, and what you would at least want to start with is pointing out that you need to change your vocational goal to the appropriate goal, and that's going to require training. Put it in writing. Now you can use at least what you could use before. I don't know if this is still a form that's on the VA's website, but 28-10212. It used to be on the VA's website, but I know that VA's systems was not appropriately like cataloging these forms when they would come in, and somehow they were kicking them over to like education. So veterans seeking assistance, if their forms were put into VBMS, the electronic record, they were going into in the wrong direction. They were going to the GI Bill folks by mistake, and so VRCs were maybe not seeing them. So anyway, it's a thing. So maybe use what's called a 21-4138. Put in your personal statement. I seek a change to my vocational plan. I want my change to be X, whatever that is. It'll require training Y, and then explain the rationale. And when it comes to changing a plan, the appropriate regulation is 38 CFR 21.94. And there's also a subset within the new M28C. I guess it's not really new anymore, but the M28C, the electronic regulations or really guidance or policies that VRCs follow. Now they must follow the M28C, even though it's not the regulation. So there's some misdirection there, intentional or unintentional, between what the agency is required to follow and do in the regs, but also what they tell their VRCs to do in these policies that sometimes aren't. There's some disconnect at times. So food for thought. But anyway, so you're fighting back. You're sending in an equitable relief request, or not relief, but equity complaint to maybe the White House for relief. Try to get a meeting, and then additionally put in the request for a change 21.94 in writing. Definitely do not only do it verbally. Again, this is a problem veterans have. We just kind of forget. You got to put it in writing for it to exist, right? For it to really, for it to have happened. It's always the saying, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. That's, kind of how it goes. So just be careful with that. And if you end up getting a denial, just you do the same thing that you would normally do. You appeal it. You have three options: formal appeal, supplemental claim, higher level review. Now, one of the things, and I'll put this up here so some of you who don't know who I am, my name is Ben Krauss. I probably should have explained this at the beginning. I am a VA accredited attorney. I've also been doing work as a journalist for a long time, involving Department of Veterans Affairs issues, and represent veterans against the agency. VA paid for my undergrad and for my law degree at University of Minnesota, and also helped fund part of my law practice. My A big chunk of what I do is focus on helping veterans become leaders in society, and that includes helping with vocational rehabilitation benefits. And I've helped a lot of veterans become doctors and lawyers and business executives, and you name it. I've done it with this particular program. We recently got some really interesting one in particular doctorate covered that was a first for me. But anyway, real interesting stuff, and I focus on helping veterans become leaders, because at the end of the day, I feel our society would benefit from having veterans who did serve in positions of authority and decision-making capability on a local as well as regional and national and international level. And I'm doing what I can to get folks out there who will be able to represent our population on any side you can think of. So it's been a great mission for me. I love it. I love helping veterans. So if you end up getting a denial from VR&E, you can come and hit us up at the law practice, benjaminkrausslaw.com. We're happy to, take a look at a denial if it, something we can, help you understand, then you can come and request a free case eval. We can't help everybody, but the folks that we can help, we do what we can, and it's a free service that we offer. So feel free to reach out if you have a denial. You'll hear from somebody on my team or myself, and we'll at least give you feedback, point you in the right direction. And we do other things too with med mal, mass tort, and disability comp, and military discharge upgrades. You name it. We kind of cover the things that veterans need help with to get to the point where they're no longer hindered to the same degree that they would have been right out of the military. That's what we do. So feel free to reach out. And until next time, I hope this is helpful. The bait and switch issue is a big problem. I get messages from veterans on this issue on a regular basis, and I'm happy to help if I can. I'm pretty busy, so most of my time is spent working with clients, and so just food for thought. But if I do happen to see it and I'm able to give feedback, I will. We have people on the team that's what they do. So, and they can at least relay information from me, and we'll take a look and see if it's something that warrants pushing back. And then sometimes we'll say it doesn't. We're like, yeah, you don't really have a chance here. But sometimes you do, and it's worth pushing back. So anyway, having said all that, again, the bait and switch is bad. It's perpetrated against veterans. I think it's terribly dishonest. It is economically damaging, and it's deceptive. It's perpetrated against disabled veterans, and the VA knows that we tend to trust people based on their word rather than what they write down, and we also don't read that often. So it's something that they know that they're doing. It allows them to cut corners on our backs, while of course their whole existence is really supposed to be dedicated to helping us succeed. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on this Friday. Now I'll double check here. I'm at the end, so I'm going to see if there are any particular questions that popped up. It's kind of a slow day. I didn't put out the request for Q&A early enough, and so we didn't have a whole lot of feedback. So it just kind of is what it is. But anyway, for now, we'll just look forward to tuning in next time. And if anyone has questions, definitely hit us up. And if you get denied, we'll take a look, see what's going on. So anyway, hope you're all well. Have a great weekend. And otherwise, we will be in touch next time. All right. Take care.